What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here. Back again talking college football. And today we are talking about a team very near and dear to my heart, the Wisconsin Badgers. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, it is the best way to support a small channel like this. If you've done that, thank you. It is very much appreciated. Before we dive in full speed, we are recording this on May 16th. Portal activity is still very much in play. Badgers probably going to add some players as we get into the summer to fill out the roster. This is going to be somewhat of a critical preview. I'm going to preface the video by saying that if you disagree, please tell me why, but there's a reason for this. Badgers have been a little lackluster under Luke Fickell. They missed a bowl for the first time since 2001 last year. Hopefully I can explain the reasons why it maybe is not the most optimistic outlook for the Badgers this year. And part of that is schedule. They played the hardest schedule in the Big Ten. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, here is where the Wisconsin Badgers finished last year in terms of efficiency ratings. This was a 5-7 team, and it wasn't all that pretty when you actually dive into the results. They played a single-digit game against Oregon in terms of their losses, but otherwise this team lost 6 games by double-digit points. Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Penn State, USC, and Alabama. That's a good quality of opponent, but you get blown out in 6 games. You only win 5. Your 5 wins are against Northwestern, Rutgers, Purdue, South Dakota, and Western Michigan. You can kind of see how the efficiency metrics declined all the way to 90th on offense, 82nd on defense. And there are some reasons for this, some of them uncontrollable. You lose your quarterback for the 2nd straight year. The offense plummets because of that. You have to then fire your OC, Phil Longo. They bring in a new OC. More on that in a second. But as you enter the next season, there's still a lot of questions. Luke Fickell, year 3, he's 13-13 with the Badgers. Again, he just led them to their first missed bowl season since 2001. Blown out 6 times. I'm on record as a Luke Fickell supporter. I am not completely writing him off yet. He accomplished what I think is the most difficult thing to accomplish, at least in the previous era of college football. He brought a G5 team to the playoff. His leash is growing shorter. He's making some hard decisions on his staff. I don't think the complete story is written on him yet, but it obviously has not started well. And that begins with hiring Phil Longo. And Longo kind of unlucky in a way with the backup QBs, all his starters getting hurt. Now you go to Jeff Grimes. And I think the biggest difference between Grimes and Longo is Longo runs the air raid. Grimes has been multiple in his quarterback systems. We've just saw him with Kansas last year. That Kansas team finished 6th in total offensive efficiency. He was with Baylor before that. In 23, that offense ranked 81st in efficiency. They had a QB injury, however. They were 25th in 2002. The biggest thing I can say with this offense is it's multiple. It is likely going to use the personnel, no matter what they have, to at least a more efficient degree. Whereas last year, you're pigeonholed into an air raid offense. Kansas last year was 112th in pass rate. There were 117th in seconds per play. That was with a mobile signal caller, and they're going to move forward with Billy Edwards this year. We've seen Grimes with a lot of different QBs, so I'm a little more optimistic that they are just going to run an offense to the player personnel they have, not just an air raid because we want to run an air raid. Defense, Mike Tressel is back. He's been with Fickell for a long time, going all the way back to his Cincinnati days. Wisconsin did drop from 27th in total defensive efficiency to 81st. So that is a big problem. I think a lot of that player personnel driven. 82nd, excuse me. They missed on a lot of transfers last year. There's no way around that. Their recruiting has been pretty good. So I think there is a chance they can bounce back on this side of the ball. Let's take a look at talent acquisition for Wisconsin. This is an area Fickell has succeeded. You can see 59th in 2023. That was the final recruiting class that we really had Paul Christ in the building for. And no surprise here, Fickell has not retained hardly any of that class. Last year, they were 23rd. They were 27th this year. Both of those metrics are pretty solid. However, we're getting dangerously close to the 10 marker in the Big Ten. Like, this is barely a top 10 recruiting team in the Big Ten right now, as a lot of the other teams have gotten their act together. Since we introduced the West Coast teams, USC, Oregon, pretty regularly recruiting ahead of Wisconsin. Washington is in this ballpark. Even UCLA is recruiting at a high level. A lot more competitive in the Big Ten, but recruiting is still solid for the Wisconsin Badgers, giving them a foundation. We're now at the point where they need to start turning this into on-field play. But let's dive into the two-deep roster. It is very interesting for Wisconsin this year. We have a lot of change. Again, a portal-heavy team. And it makes sense. We just talked about recruiting. They bring in the 14th ranked portal class. They've been top 25 in the portal the last 3 seasons. So that's going to be a big part of this offense and defense for that matter. Here's our 2 deep depth chart. Transfers are in yellow. We have experience in terms of their year on the field, their snaps the last 2 seasons, recruiting ranking in terms of stars, and then we have a value score. That value score basically looks at your recruiting ranking first and foremost. Then the more snaps you play, the less it factors in recruiting, the more it factors on-field play. So diving into this position by position, the Badgers go out and add a transfer quarterback for the 3rd straight season. Previously, Tanner Mordecai. Then it was Tyler Van Dyke. Now we move to Billy Edwards of Maryland, who played an entire season last year as a starter. He was the 55th most efficient QB in college football, 65% completion percentage. Over 2,800 yards. That was 6.9 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks, 18 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays. He looks like a stud quarterback. He's 6'3", 222 pounds. He can run a little bit, took 17 sacks, so that kind of depresses the rushing output. But honestly, his pressure-to-sack ratio was pretty good. Maryland bottomed out last year. Worst team we've seen since they had Tagovailoa, and the offensive line was putrid. He was under pressure. He had 137 pressures and only took 17 sacks. That's actually pretty good considering he was under duress and had basically one receiver in Ty Felton, who's now on the Vikings, that you could rely on. The offense was dreadful. And Billy Edwards was actually a bright spot. So first and foremost, this is a good transfer addition for the Badgers. They did more in the portal than normal. They go out and they get Danny O'Neal. They get Hunter Simmons. O'Neal comes in from San Diego State. He started immediately as a freshman last year and played reasonably well. 63% completion, 6.6 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns, 6 picks, 13 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays, runs a little bit. It was in the Mountain West, which needs to be noted. He was the 74th most efficient quarterback in college football. Kind of an overall vanilla offense they ran out there. It was the first year of a new coaching staff, and he did not have a lot of weapons. But he's not going to start here. He's the projected backup, which you have a starter who's a backup. It's good depth. Simmons comes over from Southern Illinois. His old QB coach is now an assistant wide receivers coach. There's not really much to be said there. The Badgers do have a 4-star freshman in Carter Smith. They failed to hold on to some of these guys, so I'm just hoping at this point Carter Smith remains on the roster next year as they continually add transfers. We'll see on that. Running back, another big part of last year's sort of downfall, I guess, is Ches Malusi gets hurt and retires. They had Tawi Walker step up and play admirably in his place. They lose both of them. Ches, obviously, the retirement, and Tawi's over at Cincinnati now. That leaves Cade Yakimelli atop the running back room, who has flashed a lot on a very small sample against backups. He's 6 feet, 215 pounds, former 3-star. At first glance, his rushing output looks awesome. 274 yards, 8.3 yards per carry, caught 4 passes. But of his 274 yards, 147 of those came against South Dakota and Rutgers. You might think, oh, Rutgers is a good opponent, but that was one of the games Wisconsin won, 42-7. Yakimelli was easily their 3rd string back. He basically did not at least register any of that production until the game was well in hand. It's at least a question. I don't know what we're getting out of him. He's completely unproven at this point. You love the great rushing output against backups, but let's see you play against Ohio State, man. Like, I need to see something. They do have 4 stars on the roster, and I kind of like that they're betting on development rather than just pepper the portal routinely. Dylan Jones and Darian Dupree are former 4 stars. They're both in their 2nd year now. Jones allegedly has been the player that flashed in the spring. He's 6 feet, 206, played a tiny bit last year. Last season, honestly. Dupree played more. He's 5'10", 205. Allegedly, he struggled a little bit this spring, which is weird because he played ahead of Dylan Jones last year. He actually rushed 79 times for 317 yards. What I've seen online, and I'm not sure that this criticism is worthwhile, is that he was recruited to play in the air raid, and now he's sort of out of position in a way with the new offense. We'll see. They also have Gideon Atuka. He's a 3-star who's trying to climb the depth chart. The reason I mention him is he's much different than the other backs. He's 232 pounds. So that could be a goal line specialist for them. While the names aren't really known, not household names, I think the running back room is in a pretty decent spot just because they've been recruiting this so well year over year. Multiple 4-stars, some production. This is not the biggest concern I have with the offense. Wide receiver, they lose CJ Williams, Will Pauling, and Bryson Green. A lot of these players were injured last year. Both Pauling and Green dealt with injuries. But honestly, that allowed Vinny Anthony and Tretch Kekahuna to play a little bit more. These profile as your top 2 receivers this year. Anthony's 6 feet, 188 pounds, caught 39 balls last year. Perimeter receiver, played out wide 91% of the time. 2.29 yards per route is pretty good. This is an awesome place to start, but Vinny Anthony's just not a household name. I think he is better than people will potentially give him credit for. Kekahuna is 5'10", 187. This is a track star. Slot receiver, played there 96% of the time. Caught 25 balls for 339 yards. Briefly entered the portal, but Wisconsin was able to coax him back. Good place to start. Not much proven behind them. There are options, however. Jaden Ballard comes in from Ohio State. He's a former 4-star, but he never caught more than 8 balls in a season, 6'2", 195. It's easier said than done playing at Ohio State. I mean, throughout his entire career, you go all the way back to like the Jackson Smith and Jigba years. I mean, he's been behind JSN, Marvin Harrison, and then the incoming receivers they had. I mean, we're talking Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. It's hard to play there. So perhaps Wisconsin is more his level of competition. We'll see. We've also seen some of these these Ohio State transfers fail. The other transfer they bring in is Declan Crowdis from Hawaii. He's originally a 4-star, played at Kentucky for a couple of years, and then last year he caught 16 balls for 402 yards at Hawaii. Smaller player, but should be a depth piece. A couple other guys have seen some snaps. Joseph Griffin, Chris Brooks, Tyrell Henry, Kyan Barry Johnson. Griffin is a former 4-star. He was injured all last year, came over from Boston College, caught 25 balls in 2023. Henry's a former Michigan State transfer. He caught 24 balls in 2023. Brooks he caught 1 pass last year. Barry Johnson's a redshirt freshman. I don't know that either of them are going to play a ton. At first glance, this unit leaves a little bit to be desired, as it kind of did last year and the year before. But there's potential. I think we've seen enough out of especially Anthony and Kekahuna, where you should get reliable receiver play. I wouldn't say this is a difference-making position. And then if Crowdis or Ballard step up, it could be better than I'm actually indicating, as well as Griffin and Henry, 2 transfers that basically did not play last year. Tight end, they lose Riley Nowakowski. Big returner for them is Tucker Ashcraft. He was the worst starter on the entire offense when he played. He's 6'5", 255. He caught 12 passes for a woefully inefficient 82 yards. He only was targeted 20 times. He dropped 3 of them. His blocking was decent, I guess. But I honestly think your strength comes from your depth. Like, we need to start getting some of these other players in the field. JT Graves played 73 snaps. Jackson McGowan, the LSU transfer, played 25. He looks like a solid pass catcher. He's more of your big slot receiver. He's only 225 pounds. Grant Stack, their freshman, he's now entering his 2nd year, 4-star. He needs to play more. They also moved Jackson Acker to tight end. He's now at his 3rd position. I think he's basically going to be a fullback H-back type. And then they did add Lance Mason from Missouri State, who's just a pure receiver out there. Very unsettled position, but I mean, they finally have some options to hopefully usurp Ashcraft, who was horrible. So maybe he develops. I don't know the answer to this. But woeful receiver, decent blocker. I think you have enough in the transfer portal in that you've recruited we could get a better ceiling out of these players. But one brief criticism with Wisconsin is they have not done a good job evaluating talent, especially on defense. There's a couple guys that really flashed on a small sample that they just refuse to play. And when you have players that are ahead of them playing poorly, you need to at least take a look at some of these guys in a larger sample. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. Offensive line, they lose guard Joe Hubert and tackle Jack Nelson. Nelson was the best lineman on the team. They were also dealt an additional blow when Kevin Haywood tore his ACL. He was potentially going to replace Nelson at tackle, so that's an issue. We'll start with the tackle position and work our way inside. Right tackle Riley Mahlman is back for his 3rd season starting. He's slightly above average across the board, allowed 19 pressures last year. he should be at least fine on the right side, a player you can rely on, especially in the run game, and hold down that position. Left tackle's a mess after losing Nelson. Again, Haywood got hurt. He's a former 4-star, but I think the early favorite right now is Leighton Nelson. Originally with Vanderbilt, he appeared briefly there, didn't play last year. I don't know if he's like a lock to play at this position. One thing they've done is move Joe Brunner out to tackle, which he's a guard and he's a returning left guard for this team. That may be what they have to do. I'm not sure. Tackle is not a position of strength for them. They're clearly searching for answers outside of Leighton Nelson and potentially Brunner moving out. They do have Barrett Nelson, who played a few snaps last year. They're clearly not happy with the unit because they went out and added Davis Heinzen from Central Michigan. He's a 3-year starter, playing mostly left tackle. But, I mean, this guy is below average, and that was in the MAC. In the 3-year starting, he's allowed 99 QB pressures. Last year, he allowed 27. You really want to put him on the blind side in the Big Ten? I don't know about that. So you've got Malman. I think you're trying to piece together left tackle, and honestly, your best solution might be moving your left guard Brunner out there. Because last year, the lead pass blocker, he only allowed 12 pressures. That was obviously at guard. He's not the best run blocker, but Brunner was a solid player, and if he remains at left guard, that position should be locked down. But you do have a few more options inside than at tackle at this point. Center will be Jake Renfro. He's started for 3 years now. Most of those with Cincinnati before he transferred over. Dealt with a serious injury, missed basically all of 2022 and 2023, but luckily returned to form last year, 10 pressures allowed. Excellent run blocker. Center is locked down. Right guard is also up in the air, and that's because they lose Joe Hubert. I think it's going to be J.P. Benshaw, who has not lived up to his recruitment. J.P. Benshaw is the 20th ranked recruit in program history, but he's played 86 snaps over the last 3 years. He's competing with a former walk-on, Kerry Kondoko, which is not a good sign for the offensive line. And that's been another problem with them is they've recruited the offensive line well, but these players have not either stayed with the program or lived up to expectation. We're talking Logan Brown, Rucci. Where are these players? They're on other teams because they couldn't play in Wisconsin. The 20th ranked recruit in program history, high 4-star, J.P. Benshaw, in-state recruit from Grafton. How has he not played yet? I don't know. How is he competing with a walk-on? Maybe the best path is to play your 4-star redshirt freshman, Emerson Mandel, who played 15 snaps last year. That's why I highlight maybe moving Brunner out to tackle because you have a little more options inside. But I don't know, man. They're clearly going to work on this summer. And I probably would guess this unit takes a slight step back. It was the strength of their team last year, easily the best unit on their offense. We'll see. Losing your best player, Nelson, with no clear replacement is going to be tough. They at least have the recruits. They also added a pair of freshmen in Hardy Watts, Logan Powell. Typically, they don't like to play these guys super young, but we'll see on that. Defense. All right. So we mentioned this defense bottomed out last year. That was mainly up front. Their secondary was actually top 25, but they're going to be replacing a lot of guys, and a lot of this is probably for the better, especially on the edge. They lose 2 of their top 3. Leon Lowry, John Pius, both of those were transfers last year. They both failed. They've now left. Lowry's with Illinois. Their biggest returner is Daryl Peterson. He was actually second on the team with 22 pressures, a slightly above average player overall, decent in the run game. Second most experienced guy is Aaron Witt, who played 296 snaps. And from there, we're talking pure depth. 4-star freshman Nicholas Clayton comes into the program. They have a former 4-star in Sebastian Cheeks, who was a North Carolina transfer last year. He actually played really well on 123 snaps. And I know he underwent a position change last year, so maybe that's why he didn't play more. But this is what I'm talking about. You have players failing ahead of them. Why did Cheeks not get a longer leash and a couple more snaps a game? Like, what are we doing here? He's not really that high in the depth chart right now, but I just can't really see a reason why a player who's flashing doesn't get more snaps. Anyway, they clearly are not happy with what they have in the unit because they go out and add Corey Walker from Western Michigan and Mason Reiger from Louisville. Reiger's going to try to defy the odds here. He has been injured the last 2 years, and he's a former walk-on. Reports coming out of Louisville basically said he was advised to medically retire, and he's trying to play through it. So I truly do not know what we're going to get out of Reiger. Walker started 2 years for Western Michigan. He had average production in the MAC, 27 and 25 pressures, did show improvement year over year. At least one of them is probably going to have to play some opposite Peterson. I would imagine this is a rotation. And honestly, I hope they just lean to the youth because that is the strength of your team. Behind them, they do bring in Tyrese Fearbree from Kentucky and Michael Gardner from Grambling State. Fearbree's at least a former four-star, hasn't got on the field much with Kentucky in his 3 years there after his elite recruitment. And then Garner barely played in the FCS. He's not going to play for this team. Inside, Wisconsin loses two of their top three defensive tackles, returning only Ben Barton, who, despite being 310 pounds, actually struggled for Wisconsin last year. So expect them to turn to the transfer portal again, where they bring in Parker Peterson from Tulane, JVR Suggs from LSU, Charles Perkins from UT Martin. Starting with Peterson, played 276 last year in his third season with Tulane. 12 pressures, decent run defend numbers. I think he's going to play for Wisconsin. People will look at Suggs and see that he played for LSU and forget that he actually started with Grand Valley State. It's a guy that probably flew too close to the sun in his transfer up to the SEC, but on his 133 snaps, he actually didn't play that poorly. So perhaps they see him on the field a little bit more. And then Perkins, coming over from the FCS and UT Martin, was exceptional at that level of competition, just a really big jump into the Big Ten. But like Edge, I think you're probably looking at youth for the true ceiling of this unit. Sophomore four-star Dylan Johnson played 139 snaps, was a little bit weak on those, but he was a freshman. Ernest Willer Jr. is another second-year four-star. Jalen Williams is an incoming four-star. So there are talented players on this team. We don't need to just be relying on these FCS transfers. We'll see who actually wins out the job, because if the four-stars are playing well enough to actually get on the real field, I have a lot more optimism with Wisconsin. Linebacker is going to be messy. They lose two of their better defenders, honestly, in Jake Chaney and Jaheim Thomas. And this has not been the same position of old where we're talking about, the Leo Chenal days. They have not had a player up to that caliber in quite some time. The returners, Christian Allegro played 379 snaps. USC transfer Tackett Curtis played 183. Allegro was actually very good, awesome blitzer. The only place he struggled was in coverage. He allowed 20 of 24 targets to be completed. He was second on the team in tackles, too. Tackett Curtis was horrible when he played, and he's a former USC transfer. 355 snaps at USC. When he played 183 last year, he took a step back. I'm really hoping we don't have to see Tackett Curtis in any capacity. But options here are either young or FCS. They did get a snap out of Tyler Janze last year. I have no idea what that's going to mean. Former four-star Thomas Heiberger is also back. He got hurt last year. There was a lot of optimism on him. I just hope he comes in and plays right over Tackett Curtis right away. Freshman Mason Post is with the team as well, four-star. And they bring in transfer Antaron Turner from Western Carolina. The problem is he only started last year, first time in 3 years, and his production was in the 47th percentile in the FCS. He's running with the second team in the spring. That's a problem. You can't have 47th percentile FCS production playing in the Big Ten. Can't have it. Won't work. What are we doing? Bring a freshman on. Do something that's not Western Carolina transfers who weren't even good at Western Carolina. Anyway, let's move to the secondary, where this unit was in the top 25 and the only departure was Hunter Wohler. He did get drafted late, so he's a big loss, but still, you return both your boundary corners in Ricardo Hallman and Nazir Forkarine. Hallman started the last 2 years full-time. He took a step back last year. He was awesome in 2023, 3 PBUs, 7 INTs, but his production fails partially because of the ball production. He only had 2 PBUs and 0 INTs, but he also missed 25% of his tackle opportunities. So I'm just hoping we get him to return to 2023 Ricardo Hallman. Forkarine, he's another FCS transfer. I mean, he's played well for what I thought he'd be. He came over from Grand Valley State and has started for 2 years with the Badgers now. He did improve last year, 3 PBUs, 1 INT, but he allowed a 68% completion percentage into his coverage. That's far from shut down. We're just dealing with a limited player here. Forkarine is never going to be a guy that's going to get drafted or something. They also return their slot, Austin Brown. He doubles as a safety in certain packages. He was awesome last year, 806 snaps. He was awesome. He played 806 snaps combined the last 2 years. Very good run defender. 3 PBUs out of the slot last year. He did allow a 71% completion, but only 190 yards. So he's keeping a lot of stuff in front of him. He was a solid player. And they did have a lot of transfers here. I could see them just moving Brown to the slot or to safety entirely because they bring in Jameer Latimer from Jacksonville State, Deani Hill from Miami. Latimer started last year, solid numbers across the board, did allow a few more big plays than you'd like. 435 yards came into his coverage. Hill, he was originally with Marshall, and he played awesome at Marshall before he transfers to Miami. And I think he probably flew a little too close to the sun, made 5 starts, and ended up getting benched for Miami last year. So perhaps Wisconsin is that happy medium for him. We shall see. Safety, clear starter in Preston Zachman, 2-year starter, 58 tackles last year, 6 PBUs, 2 INTs, probably the best player in the secondary. And then the final safety spot, there's no clear starter. Again, I think Austin Brown could move here because there is a few more corners on the roster than safeties. But they did bring in a couple transfers, Matthew Jung from B3 Bethel and Matthew Trainer from Richmond. Jung, I think he's kind of getting the nod for being in-state. He went to Nina. D3 guy playing in the Big Ten now. It's just a wild jump at competition. Trainer for Richmond, more interested in him. He only played 1 year there, and he started immediately as a freshman. So perhaps he could play safety. Couple 4-stars, Jameer Scott and Omilo Agard are with the team as well from the last 2 recruiting cycles. The defense, I think, will be better than average, probably in like the 60s if you made me pick, but there are definitely concerns. And that's kind of the thing with Wisconsin's roster. There's concerns everywhere for all their strengths. Kicker, they have Nathaniel Vakos, the former Ohio transfer. He has not missed an extra point the last 2 years, but he took a big step back kicking last year. Finished 107th in total kicking efficiency, was 12 of 19. But man, what a weird profile. He made all 3 of his attempts beyond 50 yards. He went 0 of 3 from 40 to 49, and then he missed another 4 from inside 39. How do you make 3 50-plus yarders and then miss 7 kicks inside 49? I don't have the answer, but it explains why their kicking game was not so strong. But all this comes down to schedule at the end of the day. Let's take a look at who Wisconsin has to play. It is the most important factor as we talk about these teams. And they start out with 2 cupcakes in non-con, Miami, Ohio, followed by Middle Tennessee. Then they travel to Alabama to close the non-con. Most likely outcome, 2-1. From there, they play a lot of really good teams in this conference. Up at the top, Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon. 2 of those are on the road. Only Ohio State's at home. Only team they dodge within the top 4 is Penn State. From there, there's kind of like a second tier in the Big Ten. Wisconsin plays most of them. Iowa, Washington, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota. None of them are at the bottom of the conference. The easiest conference game they play is Maryland. This is the most difficult schedule in the Big Ten. At the end of the day, we're talking no Northwestern, no Rutgers, no Purdue, the bottom teams in this league. Wisconsin's play all of the top ones, plenty of them on the road. Their win total is 5.5 for a reason. And then you factor on some of the roster concerns where they need to develop the young 4-stars fast. Otherwise, they're relying on FCS guys, transfers from low levels. There's a lot of questions with this team. There's a lot. It's just the way it is. I don't have a strong feel in the win total right now. I think around 5 is probably right. I do not think this team is bowling. And what happens with Fickle if he misses a bowl for the 2nd straight year? Again, Wisconsin has not missed a bowl prior to last year since 2001. We will see. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment. Let me know if you have any feedback or a request. Until next time, we will see you guys with Iowa tomorrow. Good luck. We'll see you later.